All right, so this morning I'm going to go through my entire process on how to do a latte. Um, and here are all the things that I typically need in order to do my normal routine. I have oat milk, which, by the way, I use Oatly in full fat because this is actually just as efficient as the barista blend, and it's much cheaper. Not the half fat or some of the other ones, but the dark blue full fat works just as fine. So that's what I got right here. I got a cup, one of my favorite cups. The cups are so important in whenever you're pouring latte art because it needs to have this curvature. Because when you are pouring the milk, it needs to kind of smoothly kind of fill the entire cup. If you have a cup that is a square, it just will not work as efficiently. It just won't work, period. So a cup that has some curvature to it, from narrower to wider on the top, it will work perfectly. This is roughly about, I think, a little bit over 12 ounces. Anyway, this works just great. I have a double canister in here for doing espressos, for a double shot. This is what I use for my syrups. Now, this is for a latte, and this is for a flat white or a cappuccino, depending on the size. I don't know exactly what the measurements are, but anyway, this is smaller than the shot glasses that they use, or the measurements that they use for doing mixed drinks, alcoholic drinks. So anyway, we're going to be using syrup. Here is a little pointer that I learned a while after I started doing this thing. If you want to go fully organic and you want to add a little bit of taste to your coffee, there are two things that you can add to it. One of them is this: 100% US grade A strong taste maple syrup. So you don't need all these fancy flavors and lots of chemicals that may go into some of the syrups out there. This is 100% organic. And the only thing that I have to do, because this is very sweet, is add half the measurement that I would use on a typical syrup, because this is a little sweeter than usual. But this adds so much taste to a latte. So maple syrup. Another thing that I add to it, and a lot of baristas do this for two reasons. They add hot chocolate. This is just a hot chocolate powder mix. And the reason why they add it is twofold. One of them is because it will add a little bit of taste, a little more of a nutty taste to your latte. As long as you don't do it overboard, because once you go overboard, then it tastes more like a mocha. But as long as you don't go overboard, this is great for adding a little bit of nuttiness to the latte. Plus, the second thing it does, it also or it helps with a darker surface to your espresso, so that when you're pouring the latte, it actually looks much better because the surface of the crema is actually darker. Other things, my spoon that I always use for measurements, a little whisker to mix the espresso and all the different things, and a little temperature gauge. Coffee beans. Let's talk about coffee beans real quickly. This is my favorite roaster from Texas, and I actually typically I buy smaller bags because I want my coffee bean to be as fresh as possible. But in this particular case, because these come from Texas, and it gets a little bit price sensitive when it comes to the shipment, it just makes more sense to buy larger bags. But this is a 32 ouncer. You typically get like a 12 or a 16 ounce bag. This coffee is just freaking amazing. It's very fresh. By the way, it's extremely important whenever you're buying coffee beans that it gives you when it was roasted. I don't know if you can tell right here, but it actually says that it was roasted on September 1st. There are some coffees that will tell you when it would be best used by, but never go by that. That is a typical trick of the trade for less than great coffee beans, because they are the ones who are determining how long that coffee bean can taste good. And that should never happen. You should always have freshly roasted coffee beans so that the crema can be as good as possible. Otherwise, what will happen with old coffee beans, the crema on the very top of your espresso is going to be very thin and is not going to pour well. So roasted date, very underrated, but extremely important for creating a really good latte. All right, so let's get the process started. I'm gonna get my Breville warmed up. And I'm gonna get some coffee beans inside. So we're doing a double shot of espresso. I want to make sure that the coffee bean, there are plenty of people, by the way, who use measurements. I kind of know how full this thing needs to be, so I don't go through that process anymore. As long as whether you use a measurement or not, that's up to you. I kind of already know the consistency based on how full the little canister is. So let's grind it. Now here's something that's very important. I don't know if you can tell, but on the Breville there's a single and a double size for grinding. I always do the single, and the reason why I do the single is because after doing half of it, I stomp it down. I tamper. Stomp it down. The reason why I do that is because once I do the very top as well, it will actually be a lot more compact, the coffee bean, instead of having to wait until it's all full and trying to do all of it at once. So I do it halfway, and then I'm going to do the second part. There we go. So that's the second. I stomp it again, use a decent amount of pressure just to make sure that it is as compact as possible. If the coffee bean is not very compact, what will happen is the water will shoot right through the coffee bean and it will not create a good espresso. So all right, let's put this one in here. We're going to be ready to go. All right. Here's another trick that I learned in the years that I have been doing this. When you are doing a coffee, and when you're pouring an espresso on a cold mug, it actually affects the taste of the coffee bean. So what I typically do is I actually add boiling water to my cup ahead of pouring the espresso. This is just to warm it up. I throw the water away. But I want my cup to be hot on the inside so that when it doesn't affect the taste of the coffee once that espresso hits a cold mug. So just one of those things that you kind of learn along the way. I don't even remember how long ago I learned that, but it does make a difference. The coffee will taste much better when it's being poured into a hot mug. Okay, so let's pour the syrup. So once again, I'm doing 100% pure organic maple syrup, Canadian grade A, and I'm gonna pour this halfway up, not like I would typically do with any other syrup, just because this is a little sweeter than normal. So there we go. Let's get this out of the way. Another thing that I'm going to do in preparation is I am going to add with this spoon a little bit of hot chocolate to it. And we're going to pour that on top of the espresso once it's done. So this Done, out of the way. All right, so now this is hot. Let's do the syrup first. That goes at the bottom. And now we're going to pour the espresso. Double shot. Now, a good shot of espresso, first of all, when it comes to the pressure, it should be in the gray area. The other thing is the way it's pouring. If it's too liquid, if it looks a little too dark, it's not pouring properly. As you can see, that's pretty good crema right there. It's not perfect. I may need to do a little bit of tune-up on the Breville, but that's pretty decent. And now what we're going to do is we're going to pour the hot chocolate on top of it. Because this is a latte, this is like 12 or 14 ounces. I do a fair amount. When I'm doing a flat white or a cappuccino, I do much less than that. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna let that settle, because the hot chocolate, is gonna start melting onto the espresso, which is good. All right, so let's put this aside. Let me get this out of the way, because now we're gonna get into the key part of it, which is how to froth your milk. Now the oat milk needs to be shaken prior to being used. So this was already shaken, and that's why you see bubbles in it. Here is another thing that is extremely important, which, by the way, here is my rag that I typically use to clean the spout after I do this. So one very, very important thing, and this is one of the reasons why my lattes tasted very watery. It didn't have enough taste in the beginning. When you turn the spout for the frother, there is water accumulated here. So what the machine is going to try to do is spew that out. So as you're going to be able to see, right now it's actually going to start spewing water. If you don't allow that water to come out before you start frothing, that water goes right into the milk and it will water it down. And you will definitely feel the difference, because it will affect the taste of the coffee and the milk. So now we turn this on, and I'm going to take advantage of the fact that it's going to spew some hot water, so that I can have my moist towel to clean the spout after it's all said and done. So there you go. You see the water coming out? You don't want that water on your milk or on your espresso or your coffee. So there you go. So now this is moist. Now it's just spewing out steam. So it's ready to go now. So now what we're going to do is we're going to put this right at the very top of the... let me actually bring this over here. So it's got to be right at the very top of it. Not enough that it's all the way inside, because then it won't do this, but right on the surface, so that you can hear a very smooth little popping noise. If it's too loud, then it's not enough. You're not putting the spout on the milk enough. It has to sound like this. And what it's doing, it's basically creating the rotation on the milk, as you can see. So now, what we're going to do is now that the rotation is going, we're going to set this on the machine and just let it keep doing its thing. Now, it's still rotating, but now this is where I'm going to use the thermometer to make sure that the milk doesn't go overboard. It's still rotating, and you still allow it to rotate. Now, this temperature gauge is incorrect. Your temperature for the milk should be 140 degrees, but this thing is wrong. So when it reaches 100 degrees on this thing, it's actually 140. So once it reaches 100, I'm gonna take it out fairly quickly so that it doesn't produce a bunch of foam on the very top of the milk. So here it is approaching 100 degrees here, or 140, what it should be. I'm going to turn this off and then take the milk out. There we go. Now, as you can see with the consistency, let's put this out over here. As you can see with the consistency, it looks like melted ice cream. And that's how it's supposed to look. If it's too bubbly, then it's not going to work. So right here is the perfect consistency. You kind of stomp it down as well, the little pitcher, just to kind of get rid of the bubbles on the very top. I let it sit there for just a little bit, and I typically clean my spout while the milk is settling. And I also use this little tool to clean the inside of the spout just to make sure that there is no milk in there. There we go. And now let's go back to the espresso. So now, as you can see, the hot chocolate has melted. Now there is syrup on the bottom, there's espresso on the middle, and there's hot chocolate on the top. So what we want to do is we want to mix it well. Especially when it comes to the syrup, it's kind of a pain in the neck, because if you don't mix it well, the syrup is heavy and it will stay at the bottom. And it's not until the end of your latte that you're going to taste a bunch of sweetness. So that's not, you don't want that. So now what we're going to do is pour it. Pour the milk. And this is probably the most key part. Out of all the key things that you're doing, this is the most key part of doing a successful latte. Now, one of the things that I do, I twirl it like this, and I get rid of the very top, because the very top is going to be a little too thick. We're going to lay this to the side, and we're going to start pouring the milk right in the middle in doing a circular motion. So here we go. There we go. Now we're going to go down in the middle, and we're going to move it side to side. And there we go. That's a successful latte. Hope, first of all, that you enjoy the coffee. And second of all, hope you've found a little bit of tips and tricks on how to make a successful latte. This milk was not perfect, but it will do. It's okay. As you can see, there are some darker tones on the top, which is good, which is specifically good when it comes to a latte, because there's a lot of milk in there, and you still want the difference on between your latte art and the rest of the milk. Hope you found the video entertaining and also educational if possible, and maybe a tip here or there may help you in your process of coffee making. We'll see you next time.